Welcome to Experience This, Season 3, Episode 13. Very excited today to have, I call most people esteemed guests. I think if I don't call somebody an esteemed guest, they're going to get upset with me. Our esteemed guest, Jay Lemon from Stripe today. But let's start off with going through, introducing our hosts. I am Christian Watts with Magpie, and Laurie.
Hey everyone, I'm Laurie Timoney with Go City. Happy to be here today with James.
And Bruce Rosard with Arrival. And looking forward to having 45 minutes to hang out with James. Usually it's more like a minute here, a minute there. So let's jump in.
Yeah, James, do you want to give us a quick intro and maybe a little bit of a background? Don't talk for like half an hour on it, but a bit of a background on your sort of previous and then what you do now with Stripe would be great. I think I've got Stripe does, but maybe you can tell us quickly.
No, you should definitely never assume that. But and lovely to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. So James Lemon, I joined Stripe 4 years ago to create a new type of role here, which is an industry lead. So Stripe wasn't built for any particular industry. We do global financial software for accepting money, paying out money, managing money for any kind of business. But it turns out it's a great fit for the travel industry. With the ultimate ecosystem, we're moving money all around the world in pretty complex ways. So it's one of the top industries that Stripe's focused on globally. So fantastic to join. It's a really fun role, and so I get to meet and work with all of you at different cities around the world. It's a lot of growing awareness. What is Stripe? What do they do? Why is payment strategic in travel? So kind of events, thought leadership. It's a lot of biz dev. It's a lot of spending time with prospects and customers and helping them see the light in terms of what we're doing in payments. And then there's a fair bit behind the scenes as well, making sure that we really are building the next kind of tooling that the industry needs in terms of country coverage and capabilities, that kind of thing. Prior to Stripe, very briefly, I'm just from the travel industry and not from payments at all. So I had 7 years at IHG Hotels and Resorts and kind of strategy planning, how they expanding around the world, what's going to be the role of mobile and indirect channels. 5 years at Travelport, so really thinking about the future of distribution and where it could go in hotels, in car rental, and then obviously everything's going on in airlines. And then for 4 years, kind of in and out of startups, both my own and other people's, including Hostmaker, a short stay platform that went on to become the pilot for Marriott Homes and Villas. So nice kind of checkered history through corporate tech and startups. But yeah, really happy with where I'm at Stripe and get to travel the world and learn about payments and learn about kind of all the impacts that tech's going to have on an industry I love. So exciting times.
That's great. Yeah, I love attending your events. I've been to quite a few events, usually attached to a WTM or an Arrival or something else. They're often the Travel Masters. They're really great events. A quick one, something I've been thinking about the last day or two, innovation, right? You probably see a lot on innovation, I imagine. There's definitely a feeling. Actually, it was you interviewing Bobby Healy, formerly of Car Trawler, in a Dublin Stripe event. And he talked about, I think, the airline industry going in waves of 3 years or something as far as innovation. There's definitely a feeling in travel, right, that travel moves slowly as a vertical. And I think there's a feeling in experiences, particularly, we move behind hotels. I think flights maybe are slow as well. Do you see that? Are we a slow sector? Experiences? Is travel slow compared to others? How does
I sometimes, I sometimes feel it's a little brutal to label kind of everyone with this idea that a sector is slow, because I think there's a really broad spectrum, actually. I think there's a lot of really fast-paced innovation coming out of travel. That could be pockets of larger companies. It could be some of the startups that are gaining great traction. I mean, it definitely feels the case that it's never been easier to set up your own business, get going with something. But there is that reputation you talk about, and I try and unpick it. It was interesting to do it with Bobby a little bit. I think there's a few layers to it. I think there is, dare I say it, probably a little bit of complacency in the industry. The things that have been sticky for 10, 20, 30, 40 years still seem to be pretty sticky in terms of the key players and the distribution chain and who does what. Some of the big brands seem to have this kind of unassailable lead, which is maybe great for them, but maybe they get lethargic and everyone else gives up. But then I also wonder if it's more of just a systematic thing. Like just the tooling of travel can be really complicated. If you think about the way an airline's done retailing, the GDS has translated it, the payment runs underneath it, runs to a travel management company, and then that runs to a corporate booking tool, and then a corporate buys it, and then finally a traveler might take a trip. You're like, there's just a lot of players that we've put in place, and very few people have just busted that apart. But people do. I mean, if I look at Uber, right, if you think about the old transfer market, like 15 years ago, people were like, it's always going to be like this, the way you order taxis at airports. And actually, and if you were a corporate, it was incredibly complex and expensive, and the market's really buttoned up. And Uber didn't bother building the tooling that runs through the existing industry. They were genuinely a strong consumer-led brand. And I think if you do get that consumer-led brand right, then it kind of drives people with you. So look, we see really interesting pockets of innovation, and loads of people jumping on board with some of the best tech companies out there, and we get a chance to partner with a lot of them. But you're right, I do see other companies that we may talk to for, frankly, all 3 or 4 years I've been at Stripe, and they have not yet made a choice and a priority around bits of their tech stack, bits of their strategy. And that can be sad to see as well. So I think it's a mixed picture, but I'm generally an optimist. So I think the
James,
industry will be dragged kicking and screaming.
You do a good number of startup events in different cities around the world. Who are the top startups that you've seen in the last year? And there's a lot, of course, they're all AI, but they're actually getting traction and doing real business.
Yeah, so yes, I do a lot of startup events. I'm a really big believer in community, right? And that obviously starts with the industry associations, but I love the fact that this is an industry where you're going to get stuff done and learn the most just by putting people in a room. So any startup that turns up in a room and is willing to network late into the night is definitely one I would push pretty hard. Who's impressing me at the moment? Look, I think there's some really ambitious res tech and property management systems out there that are genuinely trying to do the best thing for the kind of long tail and mid markets. Like they're pushing fastest into, hey, we better have a booking engine that's AI ready. We better have kind of one-click payments. We better be available in 100 odd markets. So I think I'm really impressed by a few of the players in that space.
You have to name names, please.
Yeah, come on.
You know what? I often do name names, and I often find other people I see on podcasts don't name names, and I wonder if they may stay in their jobs for longer than I will by saying, actually, wait a minute, you didn't name me on your podcast. So let's just say there's a collection of customers of Stripes that I'm incredibly proud of in that space. Who else? Look, I think, goodness, there's a couple of baby little startups that are starting to do the kind of AI travel agent thing that I think is cool and brave. I think, again, if you channel a Bobby Healy, you would say, goodness me, why on earth are you starting to build a new consumer brand in 2025 in like the OTA space effectively? But people do. I really like the disruptive TMCs. Again, maybe that kind of history of a travel port. So I will name people like Travel Perk recently just rebranded Perk. I still think Navan, who just IPO'd, are doing really cool stuff. These are industries.
Wait, can you be a startup if you're an IPO when you're public? Like, when do you stop being a startup?
I guess in the travel industry, if we're talking about 50-year cycles compared to the big giant TMCs, they're relatively new.
Sure.
Uber's a startup. Come on, Bruce. Uber, Airbnb, are startups, aren't they?
I don't know how much I can say, but Go City are really impressing me at the moment as well. Actually, they're making some very smart technology choices.
Who is that? I think I overspoke you. Say again, James.
Laurie and the team, the Go City team, I think, are doing some
cool
things.
Another startup, Go City.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, goodness. If you're thinking about just the mix of those that make Focusrite's top 25 or that we were on stage with last year, it's a real mixed bag. I think the world of traveler experience and guest experience, I think, is going to be really interesting. I think we've had a bit of a kind of reservation system first approach, maybe for 10, 15 years. And I do start to see some really interesting people going, no, we're going to start with the guest journey. So if I think a little bit about more the hospitality side for the moment, they're going, right, actually, we're just going to grab the guests really early in their pre-stay. This is going to be the tool they're going to use for their chat or for their engagement and maybe upsells. And then that's going to be where they do their check-in. That's going to be where they maybe purchase experiences. That's the bit where we're going to kind of tag in loyalty. So I think there's some cool things in that space. I haven't seen a lot of that in the experience attraction sector, but yeah, more to come. Look, I think, frankly, everything's blowing up at the moment with how easy it is to build startups and some of the things that startups are choosing to focus on. So I can give you an answer now, and it'll be completely different in 6 months' time.
I can
I'm being
imagine
coy.
that, you know, the fact that people can spin up companies now in a day, you know, potentially is going to mean there's going to be so many dead soldiers on the side of the road as a result of that. You know, just probably lots of people spinning up ideas that, I mean, how many of them are going to survive? That is going to be an interesting space to watch. And obviously, Focusrite keeps good track of anybody that they recognize. But, you know, going back to kind of like what you had said regarding sort of legacy systems, you know, we always hear about that. You know, that travel has all these legacy systems, which make it so hard to wade through various, you know, integrations and opportunities. And, you know, I agree that travel is a really slow moving beast. I think it's been that way for a long time. I wonder why that is. Is it because we just know people want to travel and they've accepted for years that it's going to take this to get a ticket, it's going to take this to get a hotel? You know, they're used to wading through. But how is AI going to change that? To me, it seems like AI is just maybe it's the game changer that travel really needs. You know, it needs a boot, a kick, and I feel like now if we aren't ready for AI, then we're going to be left behind. So is that going to be what it takes to get some of these systems upgraded to so that they can be interacting with MCPs and so forth? Or I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question, I guess, is how did we get here? And I think that a couple ingredients, but I'd love to know your thoughts as well. But you're all experts in this too. Is I think it is just really fragmented. There's just tends to be lots of parts of the stack to get anything done. So I think it's just been really hard for someone to take charge and go, no, we're gonna fix this. The other, which I think is just the beauty of travel, is that it is incredibly entrepreneurial in the sense that a lot of the best, multi-city, multi-country experience providers started off as, a tour guide provider in one city in their spare time. And so maybe relatively low barriers to entry just means actually there's just a really fragmented long tail of businesses. So that creates this like mad spectrum of sophistication where you get some people who, frankly, they don't even take bookings online, or they've only just started taking bookings online. They might have an email address or a phone number. And then at the other end, you've got probably people who have deliberately built tech companies for the sector, and that's a completely different scale. So what does that mean for AI? Yeah, I think AI will inevitably disrupt everything that we're doing. I think it will create new ways that consumers engage with travel and whole new consumer behaviors. And I think we're going to learn a huge amount about how consumers want to be inspired, search, book, and pay for stuff. I think behind the scenes, you're right, it makes it easier to start companies. I think it should make companies more productive. It should get rid of some of the admin if you do it right. I mean, you can get back to the human side of travel and delivering the experience, which I think is why people got into travel. But I think it could also be quite existentially challenging as well if we don't get it right. In that, I guess I love to paint this picture where all the tools will be democratic and open to everyone, and it'll be a lovely free for all. But you could also see a world where over the next few years it quickly gathers power and money, frankly, into just a very few hands, and actually, commission levels don't change and the power dynamics just shift to another player or even the same players, and those people who are out there building their experience businesses and travel businesses actually are no better off at all. So I like to hope that there's a democratic option for everyone to play in AI on the commerce side of it and on the productivity side of it, and I like to hope that we all grasp that. But again, sitting here 20 years ago, you maybe didn't grasp the internet era, and it was left to a few big players to win. So I think it's good. It could play in a few ways. I guess, Christian, this is something we've chatted about a little bit as well. I guess you're probably at that more extreme end of, hey, websites as we know them are going to be dead. Machines are going to talk to machines. In some ways, maybe only a few players will be able to play in that space because it feels very cutting edge. It feels very advanced, and there isn't a sign necessarily that the tools will be available to everyone.
Yeah, it's been worrying me the last few weeks. I think the possibility that a chat, and Stripe's actually involved in this potentially, but if Stripe enables I know you don't have Booking and I don't know who you have, but if say you had Booking and Expedia as customers and you helped them get integrated to Chat GPT might think, well, that's enough. That's most of the hotels in the world. We don't more than that. Auction pressure is nice, so maybe they had 3 or 4 more just to bid up whatever paid promotions. But Stripe wouldn't care either, right? You got no incentive to help the small guy, right? You want the multi-billion-dollar accounts because you get paid a couple of points on whatever you end up with, half a point. You don't care about
I'm not
helping the
sure.
startups, really, do you? Only that they have
I'm not
potential
sure.
to grow.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Stripe's DNA is helping startups, right? I mean, we were the first company that you could ever just self-serve taking payments with. You could just get yourself going without a bank and a middleman and that kind of thing. And I think even now, like a huge portion of American companies at startup stage are incorporated using the incorporation tool we have in Delaware called Stripe Atlas. So I think supporting startups has always been in our DNA, and I think that they'll continue to be like a huge part of our business. But you're right, some of those that does aggregate into platforms as well. Like we support people like Shopify, and that's the aggregation of lots and lots of small players too. Yeah, in terms of where it ends up, I think look, it's so hard. I think we've all made the mistake with AI for the last couple of years to take something that happens in a month and extrapolate it out and go, that's how it is now. And I think, remember when ChatGPT launched, everyone was like, oh God, it's so inaccurate and clunky. No one's ever going to do anything with this. And so I think don't take the launch with 2 companies as thinking like this is the way e-commerce is going to play out in ChatGPT. I think, I won't go into the numbers, but we have a wait list of retailers next in line, and there are hundreds, if not thousands. So I think ChatGPT is sitting there going, look, we don't want to be specialists in this space. We want to change the world in terms of medicine and human productivity and robotics. So let's create tools that anyone can do commerce online. Let's let the market play out in as it will. And I think the same will happen in travel. I won't hypothesize, but it wouldn't surprise me if again they launched with a few, because there's some kinks in travel you need to iron out, right? You don't get all the money up front, you don't get all the service in at one time. All of these things that we always say are quite unique to our industry. You can see how they want to iron that out with a couple of tech-enabled players before they go, yep, you know what, in terms of consumer safety, data, effectiveness, friction, payments, this is the way it's going to play out. So I think it's going to be 2026 is going to be a huge year for agentic commerce in travel, and I hope every business is get ready for it by doing it on their own site first, which you can do right now. Like you could easily spin up a chatbot on your own site, which is like, why are you here, and that leads you to real-time content availability and a payment button. Like that's real. So yeah, this is not something that's just like left to the big guys to win. Anyone could be doing that with Stripe tools, and hopefully some of the res techs they're working with are thinking about that as well. Because we should, some of the fundamentals won't change. There still needs to be a way to book direct with, the long tail, the mid market, who the passionate experience providers.
So Christian,
just
I
one
want
thing. So I just want to go one little thing, Laurie, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
Are you're the gatekeeper for I forgot what it's called, Agentic Commerce, whatever ChatGPT's, what's it called? Agentic Commerce Protocol or something?
Agentic Commerce.
Yeah.
Are you the gatekeepers of that? Have they in effect contracted out the Stripe and you'll bring the merchants in? Or are they deciding who gets in? I mean, did you bring Shopify and Etsy to them, or did they assign them to you, or how does that work?
So we're the partners they launched with first, and I guess there's a kind of a speed to market DNA and a kind of technical capability thing that was just a nice fit, I think, between OpenAI, Stripe, and those 2 companies. But I think you can see from the announcements that are coming every month or so, new payment players are getting into this space all the time. OpenAI have got their own sales team and are out there having conversations, as have the 4 or 5 other big AI platforms, right? They're all, Perplexity launched their hotels product nearly a year ago. Everyone is kind of doing their own thing and looking at it. And I think there's kind of there's no agreement behind the scenes that someone's taking the lead. I think there's several groups of people who are just really passionate about enabling this, and the fastest ones are working with the fastest ones, and the best ones will win in the end. So I don't think there's a master plan behind it. I think this is the big announcement that people are excited about at the moment, and it's exciting that it's the biggest AI company, one of the biggest payment companies, and a couple of the biggest kind of retail platforms. So I think that really helps give it some momentum. But as I say, I don't think that's a sign of how it will be a year from now. And so I think there's kind of everything to play for everyone. Certainly no no complacency or kind of no power struggles have been settled.
Yeah, I just was wanting to back up a little bit because I want to make sure that everybody who's listening understands what's going on here. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about, what is Agentic Commerce Protocol and how does it work? Like the buyer comes in and then, so what exactly are you doing and what is ACP? And then also maybe you could even talk a little bit about how that interacts with model context protocols. So basically bring the two of them together just for people that maybe they're not up to speed on this, because I wasn't up to speed on it until just recently. So I don't know, maybe.
I, for one, want to understand, how does ACP integrate with MCP to make money? Okay, go.
So what's been clear since these kind of Gen AI chatbots were launched is that one of the top things people want to do with them is plan their travel and spare time and experiences, right? So people have been doing that, and obviously the models have just been out there with all the information they've collected, either stored or real time, and throwing back what they think are the right answers, and that accuracy level's been getting better all the time, and people are starting to trust it a little bit more. But I guess the two steps that have really been missing is one is kind of real time, kind of content, right? Availability, pricing, the stuff that we know this industry is based on, your catalog, your inventory, effectively. And then the future is how you're actually going to check out, and then how are you going to pay for that in a way that obviously the person has been identified securely and fraud avoided. So the few ways you can do that with things like MCP, you can build your own bit of kit inside a Gen AI, and you can start to showcase your catalog, if you like, or you can do things like customer support. So the Stripe MCP, for example, if you have a Stripe account, you could go in there, you could be like, how much money did I make on Stripe in the last month? Who are my top customers? That's what the Stripe MCP does. But it doesn't solve that problem that consumers are saying, look, we're really enjoying these let's call them AI chatbots. We're really enjoying these tools. We just want to do the whole thing here. So a few things have been tried, right? The OpenAI has got its app store, which is like you effectively building an app in there that clicks off for payment. So everyone's gone over the last month. Again, everyone's kind of giving those guys a bit of a hard time, I think. They've gone, that is a bit clunky. It's going to kill conversion, which it probably will, and people won't check out. And then there's also been this idea of agents, right? And so we demoed this at our sessions conference, where basically, right, you want to buy something and literally you're sending an agent across the web, and it's like you can see it typing into websites in real time the thing you want to buy, the hotel stay or whatever. ACP is a little bit different because you've got your kind of real-time catalog in there. We can give you a real-time pay button in there as well. And if that's something like Link, which is a product we have, it already knows how you like to pay. It already knows that you're a real person. It's got your purchase history in there. So Chat GPT is happy because it's gone, that this looks like a real person on the other end of this. And you're happy because it's a one-click experience. And then that gets it paid. You're verified for fraud. We've checked the card, and you can check out. So the vision for ACP is that you suddenly are now doing your full kind of commerce stack, if you like, inside of your chatbot. That's the kind of the best way to describe it in terms of what's happening behind the scenes, in terms of network tokens being passed between different parties and things like that. It gets a little bit complicated, but I would absolutely suggest, if anyone wants to know more and you feel like this is for you, like, please reach out to Stripe, because we have hundreds of people who are more deeply into this than me. But the concept is you should really be able to buy this, build this once and sell everywhere. And if you do it with Stripe's ACP, we hope we live in a world where it becomes agnostic. You can do it inside OpenAI, but we can make sure it's the same stuff you need if you want to do it inside of Perplexity or Grok or a number of others, rather than forcing these poor companies to go, right, I've got to do it differently for every one of the 5 or 6 main kind of Gen AI tools. So the idea is you're effectively starting to build mini stores inside of Gen AI chatbots. That's kind of the vision, which will be familiar to people out in China with things like
it
doesn't
sound. I'm not a fintech guy at all, but it doesn't sound much different than what Stripe has been able to do for the last decade or however long with the web, right? Like where so many of the websites have been enabled by your ability to process payments. It's very standardized, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of what you did to build your market share.
I think they're building a kind of one-click checkout, making payments seamless, thinking about hundreds of little optimizations that get customers kind of happy that it's secure, it's easy to use. You're absolutely right. I also think there's another part of our DNA, as you talk about, that we're pretty good at moving money behind the scenes as well. So if you think about your favorite ride-sharing app, food delivery app, it's probably also built by Stripe. So the customer gets one experience on the front end, and then behind the scenes, we split that payment. Maybe the platform gets some, the supplier gets some, a scooter rider gets some. Like so kind of making tokens, sharing tokens across, automating payouts, money splitting. We've been pretty good at that stuff as well. And so I'd like to think you're right, Bruce. Like it's not an immediate switch, but by putting a team on this for a year and working closely with partners like this and thinking about where it could go, you're right. I think we're in a really great place to do well. Take a product like Link, right? I mean, we literally launched it a few years ago. I think we just announced it's across 200 million users around the world. Right now, it's really kind of storing payment methods, but we definitely have a vision that it should become your digital identity that you now send out into this AI-led world, to the point in the future where maybe you even give it permissions, right? Which is like, hey, your Stripe Link or your agent knows that you can spend up to $500 on family experiences this weekend in the New York area, right? And you trust it well enough to just come back and be like, hey, I've booked you this. Like, so it's a really exciting world that's ahead, and we just want to be that infrastructure layer to move money in a way that is easy and trusted and secure.
I don't know why you're being so amenable, Bruce. That was a chance to attack you. I think I upset you, James, a couple of weeks ago, and I accused you of moving out of your lane. It does feel like you've moved out of your lane. You were just the payment processor. Now you're sort of a bit of a gatekeeper for OpenAI. And if I have my products on this Agentic Commerce Protocol through Stripe, you'll enable that on these other channels. It seems a little bit like you could become an aggregator. That's what I accused you of a couple of weeks ago, and you got upset.
I guess it depends on aggregation, right? We're an infrastructure layer, right? So it's similar to be like, are we concerned that AWS has too much market share in cloud infrastructure? Like, because they go, right, we want to, initially it's, I guess, to store your data with us, and now it's like, hey, there's a whole load of services we can unlock for you once you're on AWS. And I guess Stripe's trying to be like that. We would love people to go, the technology landscape is complicated. Technology isn't necessarily my core business. I'm going to give that, fintech layer to Stripe. I trust you guys will be the fastest moving, the most secure, and you'll look after me. Other companies may go, it feels like too much in one basket. We're going to split this across 2 or 3 different companies. And some companies put their cloud infrastructure on Microsoft or Google, and some split it across a few. So that's where I think we see it differently. I think your challenge to me is like, a Stripe going to get into travel in like beyond payments? Like, do we want everyone to store their real-time availability and content and be updating their prices on Stripe? Like that's the vision we have in the future of the way money moves around the world is stored, and what can happen with global banking infrastructure is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. We're not going to become a kind of portal for travel to do all its thing. In the same way, I don't think OpenAI will become an OTA. Again, we can all watch this back in 5 years' time. Go on, Bruce.
Sorry, Rob Torres from Google. Over 10 years ago, was Google going to become a travel company? Oh, absolutely not. Never. We're never going to become a travel company.
Well, okay. Sam Altman just said that he was, yes, they were probably going to dabble in the travel space because they couldn't help it, even though he doesn't think it's that important. Or it's important, but it's not that important because he wants to, cure.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's just.
I don't think. I mean, Google still is not a travel agent, right? It's a you could call it a meta search if you want to compare it to a Skyscanner or Kite, but it's not a travel agent. It doesn't supply any travel. You can't call them if anything goes wrong. And I think Sam Altman sees his. I think Sam Altman sees it the same way. I think his comments are reflecting the fact that, look, travel is a super popular category in this space. It's also incredibly complicated to shop, right? I think we've all told ourselves, God, consumers love looking at 29 websites and comparing. But I think actually, we roughly know what we want to do. What we hate doing is comparing to see where we can save a few dollars. So I think if there are tools available that mean that actually we can get what we want faster, maybe we'll even be less price sensitive. So I think, I personally, I think a whole world of opportunities opening up. And I don't mean that in a kind of a scary way, saying that a company that's going to take over. I genuinely mean that if I was running a travel business today, I'd be like, brilliant. It has been hard because of this kind of tension with third-party channels. Maybe you could say there's a new third-party channel, but maybe you could say there's a new direct channel. Right. I remember that was a really big mindset shift when I was working at a big global hotel company. Actually, they saw some of these kind of almost online shopping mall apps in China. They saw them as a direct channel because they're like, it's very low commission. You control the experience that the customers see. So yeah, you're on someone else's mall, but it's your store. And I wonder if we could easily go that same way, where it just becomes another direct channel to get excited about. And engage customers.
When did you launch? When did you launch ACP within OpenAI?
We announced what we call Stripe Tour, which is our kind of global roadshow of conferences in New York, which I think right at the end of September or early October. Yeah.
It was the day of the AI forum, or the day before, because I remember putting slides on that day to talk about Etsy, and I advertised.
I'm gonna have to change it all. We're gonna have to change it all now.
Yeah.
So what have you been seeing? I mean, do you have anything to report on this? Anything interesting?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess it's not confidential to say that the number of travel businesses from right across the sector who are contacting us, we've never spoken to Stripe before, never worked on Stripe before, that are like, we are really interested in seeing like how we can play in agentic commerce, has been huge. So we're holding an agentic AI breakfast in London in a couple of weeks. I know that will not age itself very well on a podcast, but you can imagine a series of events where we chat with customers about this and discuss our perspective on it and where it could go. Like, so we'll continue to do those. But yeah, so effectively, on the third-party stuff, how do you want to show up on other people's sites? It is a bit of a weightless exercise at the moment. We can kind of explain how we think it's going to go, but ultimately, lots of things are still in motion and nothing set in stone. But what I'm encouraging everyone, which I think people are really rapidly shifting to, is, hey, you could actually be starting to do some of this stuff on your own site. Right, you could have a chatbot which has got your real-time content availability and price that you control, and then you can stick a Stripe payment button on the end with Link or local payment methods, or Klarna if it's a more expensive product, and you can start to see what this could look like. And by getting familiar with those toolings, you'll obviously be first out the gate because you already know this ACP world, as and when it becomes available, hopefully next year.
James, do you see?
Sorry, Laurie wants to know volume. She asked you specifically for how much volume through Etsy and Shopify.
I genuinely do not look at that data. I'm the travel guy, and I don't think anyone's announced it publicly.
I was going to ask about decentralized universal IDs and whether Stripe is looking at that game, because when you talk about having an agentic platform, if I know my credit cards are safe and that Stripe has enabled that for me as a consumer, right, not just me as a company, it seems like there's a real opportunity there, because that's a part of the key, right? That one click, credit card secure. It's not just my credit card secure with Christian's Airbnb and Lori's Go City tour. It's secured no matter where I go, right? Is that part of the game?
That is really important. Yeah, that's really important. I mean, look, I think Stripe and other payment companies, we live and breathe by things like the protection of our customers' data, both the end customers, our merchants, and of course things like uptime, like getting that stuff right every second of every day. And on massive events like Black Friday next week, these are the things that make or break payment companies like us. So yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think that this agentic commerce is even just kind of what we've done with someone like Etsy is a really good example, where we need to be able to securely pass payment data between groups without exposing any raw credentials. We can do that through tokenization. We can make payments that are then scoped and limited to specific businesses, times, purchase amounts, ability to be revoked. The way that we monitor it can all be checked. We keep it really flexible around, allowing different entities to be merchant of record as well. That's a really important thing as well, because these guys, someone like some of these platforms want the end merchant to be merchant of record. Some of the in the travel agencies, we have this all the time, right? It's often the travel agent wants to be merchant of record, not the end hotel. We do risk scoring, so we take our fraud score, a product we have called Radar, really seriously, both for merchants and for individuals. And then what we've done, which is unique even for us over the last few months, we've made it interoperable. So again, Shopify is end-to-end Stripe, Etsy is not. So the fact we can actually make it interoperable, the payment experience that the customer's getting on OpenAI is on Stripe, but actually the payments then happening through Etsy on another PSP. So yeah, lots going on in that space. But
Are
I
you
think
saying
data
that?
concerns will be ever top of mind for everyone.
So are you saying, therefore, I think Bruce was getting at this. Are you saying there's no need for a third-party sort of blockchain solution? You have between you and say a Google and an Apple, you guys have it covered, or do you think there's still space for a third-party blockchain type solution to come in for individual ID?
We've been talking about blockchain for 10, 15 years, haven't we? And Stripe have gone really big in the last 18 months or so on stable coins, which I think we're not seeing a lot of use cases for in travel, but for B2B payouts, I think it could resolve some of the issues we have with sending money internationally, right? It tends to be slow, it tends to be expensive, a lot of mistakes and inaccuracies. So I think it flips that. Using blockchain for identity, look, that's not somewhere where Stripe's currently playing a big role. Our stuff's not rolling around on the blockchain in terms of the way we handle identities. That's not to say there wouldn't be a new player in the space who suddenly finds that really exciting. I think when it gets into things like loyalty, earning points, holding balances, I've seen a few kind of startups start to play with that space, but I think there's just a real lack of familiarity with it. And again, I think back to the start of this conversation, with a lot of tech travel companies are maybe not the first movers, to suddenly be like, travel's going to be first in blockchain based IDs. I feel like it could be unlikely. I mean, you start at airports and airlines, you're starting to get to starting to board planes without showing your passport and things. But again, they're not using the blockchain for that. So I don't know. I haven't seen it receive widespread enough adoption to make me think it's the next big thing. But equally, I am not deep in that tech, so I might have missed something that's just on the horizon.
So James, when you think about, like, obviously the people that listen to our podcast, suppliers. So when they're thinking about ACP and how to get ready for it, is it the same kind of thing that we've been talking about for a while in regards to, cleaning up your data and making sure you have availability and making your, what are some of the key standouts that operators need to be thinking about right now as far as being ready for ACP?
Yeah, look, I think the general things you should be doing, learning about, implementing to get ready for kind of third-party Gen AI channels are I've talked about a lot, right? So the idea of generative engine optimization, like, just make sure you've done all the right things behind the scenes to get discovered. Now, Christian's far more of an expert on that than me, but it's obviously making sure you're cited on the websites that are popularly scraped, make sure your own website can be read, like start to put out blogs and articles that really describe the types of experiences you have and who it's for, and make sure there's a real richness to what you're doing. But again, I am not the right person for all of that. Following that, I think that's probably about as far as you can go right now. There probably is about kind of just make sure the tech partners you're working with are also thinking about that space. Like, if you're working with a res tech, how do they see the content and pricing and availability you've given them showing up in AI?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about,
time.
is the information that flows back and forth, with their res tech, and kind of the nitty gritty of how much availability they have, and if you can cancel something easily, or can something be modified versus, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about, is specifics around.
So the baseline is just make sure you have a great online content, right? A great online catalog. Make sure all of that stuff is somewhere ready to go. So that you should have that if you're showing it up on your own site, but make sure your res tech partner you think is cutting edge enough that they'll be, fast enough to move when that is ready, which could be sometime in 2026. But the biggest advice I would have is start experimenting with this on your own site. In a world where consumers are, the search bar is dead, people are starting with a longer prompt. There's a richness of data there. You still need to show up with your availability, your content, your price, but you're doing it to a very different prompt. Like getting good at that on your own site is entirely within everyone's gift right now. And then having a Stripe pay button at the end, is also completely doable. So I think, have a conversation with Stripe about the payment, but make sure you're working with your res tech to kind of think about that other stuff on your own site, or if you have an in-house tech to do that.
I think it's a really critical decision, as you said, for some companies, and I just want to be really clear. So I can do whatever I want on content, and ACG is it ACG? Yeah, is that right? ACP, excuse me, will get people to my website. But if my booking system isn't ACP compatible or whatever, are they going to get into the booking engine and going to be able to make a booking? Or are we just getting into the website and not?
The problem right now, Bruce, is that there's Chat GPT and Google, really, right? Google/Gemini.
Yeah.
Chat GPT is doing private deals with Stripe and Booking and Expedia. They might not be working very well, the Booking and Expedia thing, but that's the first two deals.
More to come. Sure.
Advised to come. Google's unclear where they're going. They're going to go to AI mode, but it's unclear how many integrations they're going to build, because these things work better with an integration. You can't just say, here's an I don't think Google's going to just allow Gemini to go off with book now buttons to thousands of res techs. They're going to want to build strong integrations, I think, because they've got UX to worry about. The concern is that when it comes to Google, they're making private deals. They've never done that before in their history, right? They're making private deals with private companies to display results and book now buttons, like the new thing with Resi, which I can't find. Which is just worrying for the small guy, because how does the small guy get to be part of that? Yes, they'll get sold through big OTAs, but it's hard to. I think in the end they'll win, but I think there might be a period of time where the big OTAs have a bit of a lock on some of this distribution.
I think there'll always be a chunk of demand that really comes down to the strength of your brand, right? And I think in all of this, we can talk about the tactics of online retailing effectively. This is a new chapter in what we've been talking about for 20 years. But at the end of the day, like, customers are shown they will do a certain amount of research. Their spare time and their spare cash is important. So they will resonate towards those brands that they discover through word of mouth, through socials, through reviews, that stand out and speak to them as something different. So things like the way your brand shows up online, but the way you look after your customers and think about loyalty, the way you train your people to deliver great experiences every time, great service, great follow-up, great service recovery if things go wrong. Like, these foundations of running a great experience or travel business haven't gone away. So I don't want to overly think that look, either this path of where online retail goes next is set, because it's definitely an experimentation phase and people are doing some early deals to get stuff out there, see what works, see what's popular. But fundamentally, if you're committing your passion and life to building an amazing experience business, that's still the right thing to be doing. But there will be a new layer of stuff you need to get familiar with and learn. And if you don't do any effort at all, you're right, Christian, there'll be a ton of commission sucked up through the third-party channels. But we can all speak to really strong experience and attractions that get a ton of business booked direct, because it's a super strong brand. It's got great people backing it up and everyone's raving about it. So I think the foundations of the industry are still the same, but I think there'll be a tweak in the way that some of the online retailing works. But whether commission levels go up slightly or more hopefully come down slightly because it's not these guys' core business, that remains to be seen, I think.
I think the little guys, to your comment, Christian, I still think that they need to focus on their Google My Business profiles. Like that, to me, like if they can get their GMB profiles up, the maps are the content's right, they've got like top reviews. To me, if I were a little guy, that's what I would be focusing on, as well as obviously they have to have online ability to book online, but and then it's the res techs, right? Isn't it? It's kind of like what else are they going to do beyond making sure they have the right content, delivering amazing experience, differentiating themselves? Obviously, that's a huge thing. But once they look at, really optimizing their profile and then potentially looking at, okay, what's their res tech situation? I don't know, what else can they do?
Yeah, it needs to be bookable. That's what you need a res tech for. I don't know how much the res techs can go above that. I don't know if the res techs will do integrations. I don't think any of them are big enough to do direct integrations. But the thing I always go back to, sorry.
No, I was going to say, if you chat to a res tech, what their priority is, looking at the spectrum of sophistication, a lot of their priority is still helping people with the basics, right? It's like, hey guys, this is why you need to list stuff. This is how you do great photography. This is how you think about great listings. If I think about the two best experiences I've had this year, right? One was the black cab tour I took in Belfast with the family a few weeks ago, right? It's just a contact form on the guy's website, and the last email you get is like, can you pay me in cash? Right? Like, fine. Like, that's 2 weeks
awesome.
ago. And then yeah, no, so it's an amazing tour. But my point is, like, the owner of that company is not sitting there going, right, well, how do I get AI ready? He's just like, how do I make sure that every guest has a great experience? I follow up and get great reviews. Those reviews appear on my site and others, and then hopefully that person puts some photos on Instagram and tells people. The other was mountain biking in Margaret River in Western Australia. Like, the place doesn't even take reservations. He's like, just turn up on a Sunday morning, I'll have some bikes. I'm like, oh, like, I've only got like one morning free. Like, that's a bit of a commitment, but I did. And he had some bikes, and we had a great chat about mountain biking. He got the paper map out and showed me where to go, and it got destroyed in the thunderstorm. And like, best time I've had in ages. No tech
There
at all.
are so many experiences like that, right, all over the world. When we look at how many experiences are out there, and how many are still just walk in, and that's how you buy them, right? And renting bikes is a classic one. That's a classic, or renting kayaks, or etc. So
so I think most these guys,
they've got a massive problem getting exposed. I always go back to the Colosseum, because we all talk about the 5,000 products in Italy. They're all getting exposure now because everyone's gone to 57 websites and 47 social channels, and we're all going to all these places. So everyone's getting little bites of the cherry. In the future, we don't know, but I'm fairly sure we're just going to go to Chat GPT or Gemini, and we're going to say some things to do in Rome. It's going to say, here's 3 things. That's it. It's 3 things. I might have asked for a bike or a Segway or walking or food, but it's 3 things. I'm not browsing through all this stuff. It's the best 3 things based on reviews, all these other things. There's no space for 5,000 other.
But Christian, maybe that's if you take that for those type of experiences, and then people getting recommendations from friends and checking the social media for others, maybe that's okay. So very similarly, we were in Florence looking for a kind of Duomo experience. There were 200, and I was like, I kind of want to climb up on the tower, but it just got so confusing. In the end, we just walked up, paid €5, walked around the Duomo, and then went for lunch. Right? Because if you make it too complicated for people, which, let's face it, we have, and you know what? None of those brands stood out. None of those. They were all on the big sides, but none of them had really like thought through their Instagram. None of them had been visited by anyone we knew, and so we're just like, you know what? We're just going to miss it. So the basics of getting differentiation, brand building, experiences, like getting the right people working your business, those fundamentals haven't changed. The system isn't great today. And maybe AI will make it simpler. Maybe they will be able to find the one good person. I don't know. But maybe it'll also just read your own social media and be like, hey, Family Lemon, like, these are the people that have done this trip and they all loved it. Like, this is the guy you should go with. Who knows? But it's so early. It's so early.
What I think a big game changer is, instead of saying, best things to do in Rome today, it's, what can I do in Rome today? I'm with my wife. We really love eating great Italian food, and we want to get into architecture and be able to go see the Colosseum on a private tour. So now I can do all that in one prompt and get 3 responses that are going to be keyed in, right? Versus the 5,000.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it gets much beyond that, personally.
Well, we could probably go on with this one for a while, but I know we have to wrap it up.
Let's do it. We haven't done the fast fire at the end. Let's go to James for fast. What's it called? Fast fire? Doesn't matter what it's called.
Lightning round or something.
Lightning round, something. One of those things. James, we need 3. We need 3 best countries you've been to ever. and top three countries you haven't been to that are at the top of your list.
My three favorite countries are Singapore's one for me. I just love the way they balance the kind of new and the old, and they have a ton of traditional experiences and a ton. There's so much new cutting edge stuff you can do. So that's definitely up there as a top one.
Do you like it in Singapore when you go behind the counter and they have 8 credit card machines because they're leading the world in technology?
I do know how to split my personal passions and my professional passions. Thank you. Goodness, where else? You know, I'll some bragging rights. So when I was in 2006, I drove one of the old British minis from London to Mongolia. So I've got a lovely range of countries I can pick from. But Mongolia has always been one of my kind of top countries to have visited. It's just the scale of the landscapes, the friendliness of the people, the kind of wild history they've had. Just true nomadic people. So that was brilliant. And then, you know, I might go Morocco, actually. I went there, again, a long time ago now. I'm sure it's changed, but it just feels like a country where there's so many little things to do. And I always feel like you've never scratched the surface. Like every little town is cool and individual, so many great places to eat. So that's my next one. 3 places I want to go. Like, I definitely want to unpick Central America a bit more. So people are raving about kind of Costa Rica at the moment. I think I'd love to spend some time there. I still really want to do the classic kind of New Zealand motorhoming, Lord of the Rings. I'm into my wines, so just kind of explore some of the wineries around there. And then I guess similar wildness is probably kind of Patagonia, you know, it's kind of southern tip of South America, maybe a kind of a boat out to, you know, some of the islands, Antarctica. That's just a place that just feels just so far from where we're able to get to, and I'm never going to end up there on one of your conferences. So it'd be nice to kind of go there. So there you go. That's my thoughts.
Good answers. I like that. It was very good. Very well thought through. All right, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you all, and thank you very much, James. We really appreciate your input. It's been a fantastic conversation, and
really interesting discussion. Thank you.
Somewhere very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, James.
Bye.